If you touch her, human, and she dies, her people will burn this ship to ashes. The warning hissed through clenched alien jaws, but Dr. Elias Ward didn't flinch. The medbay lights flickered crimson. Emergency klaxons pulsed like a heartbeat. The stench of burnt alloy and blood, alien and human, mixed into something metallic, heavy, unforgettable. On the surgical bed lay Commander Theri, the youngest officer of the Arvani Dominion fleet, a species of proud, crystalline-skinned warriors who considered physical touch sacred. She was dying. A plasma shard had pierced the joint where her thoracic plates met her lower abdomen, a vulnerable place for her kind. That wound was more than physical. It was taboo. The other Arvani medic stood frozen, hands trembling, refusing to go near it. Her regenerative fluids are leaking past containment, Elias snapped, checking the readouts. You patch her leg, her lungs, her brain if needed, but not there? Are you insane? Silence. The Arvani surgeon lowered his gaze. That wound lies within the sphere of origin. To touch it without ritual is desecration. Elias almost laughed. Desecration? She's bleeding out! He didn't wait for permission. He'd patched Marines under fire, civilians under collapsing domes, even bandaged a rebel child using strips of his own shirt. But this was different, not because it was harder, but because the air itself seemed to reject him. Every Arvani in the room tensed as he reached for the gloves. Theri's voice, weak but sharp, broke through the noise. Human. Don't, Elias paused. Her violet eyes met his, glowing faintly, trembling not from pain but fear. You cannot touch that place. It's forbidden even among our kin. Her words hit him like a wall. He could see the shame behind them, like she'd rather die than be touched there by someone not of her kind. He took a slow breath. Commander, I took an oath to heal, to save life, yours included. I don't care what gods or codes say. You live or I fail. Her breathing hitched. You don't understand. If I survive after being touched there, I am no longer pure. My people will cast me out. Elias clenched his jaw. And if you die? Then I am honored. He stared at her, a soldier ready for a beautiful, stupid death. And something inside him rebelled. Humanity had seen this before. Superstition before science, ritual before compassion. He'd fought it all his life. Elias ripped off his bloodied gloves, reached for the sterilizer field, and activated his instruments. Then let them cast you out, he murmured. But you'll live to see it. Gasps filled the medbay. The Arvani medics backed away, chanting quiet prayers. Elias focused only on her breathing, the rhythm of her fading heartbeat. Her crystalline skin shimmered faintly as he began sealing the ruptured bioducts. It wasn't just anatomy, it was alien poetry in motion, fragile and luminous. Her hand jerked, instinctively gripping his wrist. Stop. You'll doom us both. Shut up and breathe, Elias said gently. Her grip loosened. Her heartbeat slowed. He worked fast, voice steady, whispering instructions to his AI assistant. Every pulse of her bioluminescent veins seemed to echo in his chest. For a moment, the medbay ceased to exist, only two beings in defiance of an ancient wall of fear. When he sealed the wound, the monitors stabilized. Life returned to her readings. Elias exhaled. It's done. The silence that followed felt like a verdict. The Arvani officers looked at Theri with something between horror and awe. Her eyes fluttered open, confusion shimmering in them. Why would you risk this? He smiled faintly, wiping sweat from his brow. Because no one else dared to. For the first time, she didn't look at him like an intruder. She looked at him like a miracle. And beyond the medbay window, the wrecked starfield burned in silent witness to the beginning of something far greater than either of them could imagine. The medbay felt colder after the silence broke, not because of the temperature, because of the stairs. Elias could feel them like knives. The Arvani crew, tall and gleaming under the biolights, had backed away from the bed. They whispered words that sounded like broken glass in their language. Some turned their faces aside entirely. Commander Theri, second in command. Captain Vuro stepped forward, his voice trembling with fury. You defiled her. Human. You have polluted the command core of our ship. Elias didn't even look up from the bioscanner he was checking. I saved her life by violating her. Vuro snarled. His armor plates rattled like a beast's growl. No one, not even kin, may touch the sphere. Not even to heal. There tried to sit up, but the pain forced her down. Vuro, stop. Her voice, once firm and commanding, now shook with weakness. He did what none of us could. He chose life over law. That only enraged them further. Elias stood between her and the crew as if his unarmored body could shield her from centuries of tradition. "Listen to me," he said evenly. "You can hate me later. But if you remove her from this med bay now, she'll go into shock. You'll lose her for good." The translator crackled under the weight of alien snarls, but Thierry raised a trembling hand. "Enough. Leave us." The crew hesitated, but obedience ran deeper than outrage. One by one they left the med bay, the doors sealing with a hiss. Now it was just her and him. The monitors hummed quietly. Her vitals were steady but faint. Elias sat beside her bed, exhaustion written across his face. He'd been through battles, disasters, even a quarantine crisis on Epsilon Station, but never this kind of war. There he turned her head toward him. The faint glow of her eyes had dimmed, soft and uncertain. "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered. "You do not understand what comes next." Elias leaned back, rubbing his temples. "Yeah, I think I do. Political fallout, ancient customs, exile, maybe a lynch mob." She blinked slowly. "You speak of them like nuisances." He smiled without humor. "Because they are. I've seen too many good people die for rules someone made 1,000 years ago. You're alive. That's all that matters to me." Her eyes closed as if trying to absorb that alien philosophy. The Arvani believed purity of form preserved purity of soul. For a foreigner to touch her origin sphere was, by all tradition, the greatest disgrace imaginable. Yet the human spoke as though life itself was sacred enough to override the stars. "You risked your command, your life," she murmured. "Why?" He looked at her then. Really looked. The fatigue, the fear, the quiet strength buried beneath ritual shame. "Because I've watched people die waiting for permission," Elias said softly. "I promised myself I'd never do that again." For a long moment only the medbay light spoke, pulsing gently against the sterile walls. Then Thierry whispered, "My people will not forgive this. When I recover, they may come for you." Elias chuckled wearily. "They'll have to wait in line." A faint shimmer of amusement touched her lips, the first trace of emotion other than pain. It was the smallest, most fragile smile he'd ever seen, but behind it lingered something else. Fear, not of him, but of what she had become. Hours later, outside the medbay, Furo and the others argued in hushed tones. "She carries human impurity now," one said. "Then she is no longer commander," said another. "We must report this to the High Matron." Their voices faded down the corridor. Inside, Thierry stared at her reflection in the glass wall, the faint shimmer of scar tissue glowing where her sacred plates met. It looked wrong. It looked human. Elias approached quietly, checking her readings again. "That'll heal cleaner than any scar I've seen," he said. She didn't answer. Her hand brushed the wound, trembling. "Do you humans not believe in purity?" she asked softly. Elias thought for a moment. "No," he said finally. "We believe in mercy. And sometimes, mercy is messier than purity." She turned her gaze toward him, her eyes uncertain, half hatred, half awe. And somewhere deep inside her, the unthinkable began, an Arvani commander starting to question the holiness of her own pain. The summons came before dawn cycle. Elias was barely awake when the guards arrived, towering, Arvani soldiers in shimmering ceremonial armor, their crystalline faces unreadable. They spoke not to him but at him. "Human medic, the council demands your presence." There tried to rise from the medbed, pain flashing across her expression. "No, he's still under recovery protocol." The guards ignored her. One reached for Elias's arm. Instinctively, he twisted free. "You could at least say please," he muttered. But they didn't understand sarcasm. Minutes later, he stood in the council chamber, an amphitheater of glass and starlight. The air shimmered with the faint hum of alien energy fields. Seated above him were 9 Arvani elders, their bodies refracting the light into sharp colors, like living prisms. At the center sat Matron Serhal, High Keeper of the Arvani Dominion, her gaze cold as diamond. "Human," she said, her voice echoing through the chamber. "You stand accused of desecration." Elias straightened, heart steady. "I stand guilty of saving your officer's life." A murmur spread through the chamber, sharp, dissonant. One elder slammed a crystalline staff. "You touch the sphere of origin, an act forbidden to any outside our kind." Elias's voice didn't rise, but it cut through the murmurs. She was bleeding out. You would have watched her die rather than break your own superstition. The word superstition fell like a hammer. The elders recoiled. One hissed, "You speak blasphemy." Elias took a slow breath. He'd seen this before. On Earth, in colonies and desperate hospitals where belief outweighed reason. "I speak truth," he said. "Where I come from, life is sacred. No rule, no pride, no fear of gods outweighs it." Matron Serhal studied him in silence, her eyes narrowing. "Your kind sees existence as a thing to preserve, not to honor." "You call that sacred?" Elias met her gaze without blinking. "We call it human." Before another elder could answer, the chamber doors opened. The guards turned sharply. There he stepped inside. She wore her officer's uniform despite the weakness in her steps. The faint scar near her abdomen glowed softly under her crystalline armor, an unspoken reminder of what had happened. The murmurs grew louder. Some bowed their heads. Others looked away in disgust. "You were ordered to rest," Serhal said coldly, "and let you condemn the man who saved my life in my absence?" Thaeri's voice cracked, but her words carried strength. "No, matron." She limped forward until she stood beside Elias. "You speak of purity," she continued, "but purity would have let me die. This human acted not out of arrogance, but mercy. If that is impurity, then I accept it." The council erupted in outrage. The sound was like the shattering of 1,000 glass panes. Elias watched silently as Thaeri faced them. Trembling but unyielding, Matron Serhal rose slowly, her crystalline form reflecting the light like a blade. "You defy your own kin, Commander?" "I honor the truth," Thaeri said quietly. "He did not desecrate me. He saved me." The matron's voice dropped to a dangerous calm. "Then you have chosen your fate." She lifted a thin metallic shard from her throne, an insignia seal. Its glow dimmed. "You are stripped of rank and command. From this day you walk among the unbound, those without house or honor." The chamber fell silent. Thaeri bowed her head. The punishment was as severe as exile. She would no longer belong to anyone, nor be protected by Arvani law. Elias took a step forward, anger flashing in his eyes. "You can't be serious." Her hand touched his arm, stopping him. "It's all right," she whispered. "You gave me life. I will bear what comes after." The guards escorted them both out, one disgraced, one condemned, both silent. In the corridor beyond the chamber, the glow of the stars bled through the glass walls. There looked at Elias and asked softly, "Do humans ever feel like this when the world turns against them for doing what's right?" He exhaled, a bitter smile ghosting his lips. "Every day," he said. For the first time, she truly understood what it meant to be human. The stars outside the viewport drifted slowly, cold and silent, like the judgment of gods. The ship that had once carried Commander Thaeri home now turned its back on her. Her insignia was gone, her name erased from Arvani records before the day's end. When the guards left her at the docking bay, they didn't even speak. They simply turned away, as if her presence contaminated the air. Elias stood beside her, his medkit slung over his shoulder. "Well," he said after a moment, "they sure know how to make a girl feel welcome." She didn't answer. The glow of her crystalline skin had dimmed again, as if her very light had gone cold. The hangar doors opened, revealing a small human shuttle, the Asterion. Scarred, old, its hull patched from too many skirmishes, but it was home to Elias. "You're free to go your own way," he said quietly. "You don't owe me anything." Thaeri stared at him, her gaze unreadable. "And where would I go? My world will not receive me. My name will be cursed in every Dominion registry." Elias sighed. "Then you stay here. I could use another pair of hands that don't shake under pressure." Her lips twitched, almost a smile. "I do not even know how to fly a human ship." "Lucky for you," he said, walking up the ramp. "I'm a terrible teacher with lots of patience." The days that followed blurred into quiet survival. Elias fixed what he could. There learned what she dared. The Asterion wasn't a warship, it was a moving clinic. Elias had spent the last decade drifting between war zones, helping anyone who needed saving, no matter which flag they wore. Now with Thaeri at his side, the mission continued. A human and a fallen alien commander patching wounds across shattered colonies. At first, she didn't speak much. Her silence was heavy, the silence of someone mourning a life that no longer existed. But slowly she began to watch him. How he treated every species the same. How he scolded a wounded mercenary for refusing antibiotics. how he smiled through exhaustion just to calm a frightened child. One night, while they were orbiting a ruined mining world, she found him sitting alone in the cockpit, staring at the stars. "Why do you keep doing this?" she asked quietly. He looked up. "Doing what?" "Saving people who will never thank you." He chuckled softly. "Because someone has to. Because if we stop caring, the stars really do go dark." She sat beside him, her hands folded in her lap. "Among my kind, we honor the strong. The ones who conquer. You honor the ones who heal." Elias nodded. "Maybe that's what makes us human." Therry turned to face him, her expression thoughtful. "No, that's what makes you dangerous." He blinked. "Dangerous?" "Yes, because mercy has no limit with your kind. You give without fear of loss. You forgive even when it shames you. That power terrifies those who live by pride." For the first time since her exile, she sounded alive, her voice carrying something sharp, fiery. Elias smiled faintly. "You sound like you're starting to believe it." She looked at him, eyes glowing faintly violet. "Perhaps I am." Later, in the med bay of the Asterion, she helped stabilize a wounded miner, an insectoid species whose body emitted acidic fluids. The smell was nauseating, the burns severe. Elias guided her hands as she sealed the wound. "Easy. Pressure first, then counteragent. See the color change? That's life coming back." The miner's breathing steadied. Therry felt something new. Not pride, not duty, but warmth. When the patient left, she found herself staring at her own hands. "This feeling," she whispered. "It is strange." "To heal." Elias wiped his gloves clean. "Yeah, it sneaks up on you." Her gaze lingered on him. "Maybe that's why no one dared to touch me before," she said softly. "Because they feared what compassion would do to them." Elias looked up, and for a long moment neither spoke. Beyond the glass, the stars shimmered quietly, no longer cold, no longer distant. They were beginning to look a little bit human. The distress signal reached them in the middle of ration hour. A faint broken transmission through static, in a language neither of them expected to hear again. Arvani code. Elias frowned, fingers tapping on the comms screen. "That can't be right. Your people made it clear they didn't want anything to do with..." Therry's voice cut through his. "Play it." He did. The message came through, fractured and trembling. "This is the cruiser Velnar's Will, under attack. Breach in lower deck. Casualties mounting. Request and medical aid?" Then silence. Elias glanced at her. Her face had gone pale, her crystalline eyes flickering with something like disbelief. "The Velnar. That was my ship." He leaned back in his chair. "The one that kicked us out?" She didn't answer immediately. Her hand hovered over the controls. "They're close. Less than 2 light hours. We can reach them before they bleed out." Elias studied her. "You sure you want to do this? They exiled you, remember? They'll kill you if they see you." She looked up at him, voice low but steady. "They're still my people, and someone once told me that life comes before pride." Elias gave a small, rueful smile. "That someone sounds reckless." "That someone sounds human," she replied. The Asterion broke from its drift and burned across the black. The closer they came to the Velnar's Will, the clearer the chaos became. Flames spilling into vacuum, escape pods jettisoning in frantic bursts. When they docked, the internal comms were filled with static screams. Elias grabbed his medkit. Therry took an oxygen field generator. They stepped through the airlock together. The corridors of the Velnar were wrecked, smoke, blood, and sparks everywhere. Crystalline shards from shattered armor crunched underfoot. Arvani soldiers turned their heads as the airlock opened and froze. "You." Their voices dripped venom. Some raised weapons, others recoiled as if she were a contagion. But before they could react, a young lieutenant stumbled from a doorway, clutching a wound on his chest. "Medic, please, someone." Elias didn't wait for permission. He dropped to his knees, tearing open his pack. "Pressure. I need clean wraps." Therry was already there, pressing a gloved hand against the injury. The lieutenant's bioluminescent veins flickered erratically. One of the guards hissed, "You can't let her touch him." Elias shot back without looking up. "You want him dead?" "Keep talking!" For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Therry spoke, voice calm but commanding, the way it once had been when she led them. "I gave my life for this crew once. I'll do it again. Step aside." Her words carried the weight of the commander they'd tried to erase, and somehow they obeyed. For hours they worked. Elias led triage. Thayeri stabilized those who couldn't be moved. They patched wounds, replaced fluids, sealed ruptures. The medbay that had once condemned her now echoed with the sound of her giving life back to those who took hers away. When the chaos finally eased, Captain Vuro, the same man who'd accused her of desecration, stood before her, eyes lowered. "You saved them," he said quietly. "After what we did to you," she turned to him, weary but steady. "No, we saved them," she said, glancing at Elias. "Together." Vuro looked at the human medic, then at her. Shame flickered through his crystalline face. "Perhaps. Mercy has strength after all." Elias gave a faint grin. "Took you long enough." For the first time, Vuro didn't respond with anger. He simply nodded. Later, as the fires dimmed and the wounded slept, Thayeri stood by the viewport. The ship floated scarred but alive. "You did it again," Elias said behind her. "Touched a wound no one else dared." She looked at her reflection in the glass. The faint scar that once marked shame now glowing faintly, peacefully. "No," she said softly. "We did, and maybe the wound wasn't in me. It was in them. In all of us," he smiled quietly. "Then maybe it's starting to heal." Outside, the stars shimmered brighter, as if the universe itself approved. The Velnar's will drifted in orbit over a dying moon, its hull scarred but stable. Inside, the wounded rested, and for the first time in weeks, silence filled the ship. Yet peace never lasts long when pride still breathes. Elias was finishing a report when the message came through. By order of the High Matron Serhal, the exiled Commander Thayeri is to be brought before the Dominion once more. Immediate summons, he looked up at her. "They're calling you back." Thayeri's crystalline eyes didn't flicker, but her shoulders stiffened. "They do not call the fallen. They call the guilty," Elias sighed. "Then I'm coming with you." "You shouldn't. And yet, I will." She wanted to argue, but she didn't. Something in her heart had changed since the medbay, since the touch that broke her chains. She had learned something about humans. Once they cared, they never stopped. The council chamber looked the same as before, cold, majestic, merciless. The light cut through the glass in perfect symmetry, as though no imperfection could ever belong here. Matron Serhal sat in her high seat, her form radiating quiet fury. Around her, the 9 elders shimmered in silence. "You were warned, Thayeri," Serhal said. "You defied exile and returned. You touched our wounded again. You spread your impurity among your kin." Thayeri knelt, but not in submission. "I spread healing. You broke the oldest law of our kind, then your laws are older than mercy," the chamber gasped. Never in Arvani history had one spoken to the matron like that. Elias stood beside her, unarmed, unarmored, just a man in a room of gods. "She saved your people, matron. You call that crime. We call it courage." Serhal's voice went quiet, deadly calm. "Human. You have infected her with your weakness. You think compassion is power, but it corrodes discipline. It stains purity." Elias took a step forward. "Then maybe your purity needs a little stain." The guards raised their weapons instantly. Thayeri moved before he could. "Stop!" "He speaks truth," Serhal's eyes narrowed. "You defend him still even now?" "Because he showed me what we forgot," Thayeri said. "That life is not meant to be untouched. It's meant to be shared." Her voice rose, not in defiance, but in conviction. "I was taught that to be pure is to be perfect. But perfection does not heal the dying. Perfection does not comfort the broken. He touched the wound no one dared, and because of that I am alive. Because of that we are alive." The chamber fell utterly silent. Even the guards hesitated. Elias watched her, pride quietly burning in his chest. The matron stared for a long moment. Then she said, "You have become something else. No longer Arvani." Thayeri lifted her head. "Then I accept it." "And what are you now?" Thayeri looked toward Elias, her voice softened. "I am something between." "Something new." The matron rose. "Then you will never set foot on Arvani soil again." Elias started to speak, but Thayeri stopped him with a glance. Calm, resolved. "I understand." Serhal turned to him. "And you, human. You may leave with her. But know this, your kind's mercy will one day destroy you." Elias smiled faintly. "Maybe. But until that day we'll keep saving lives. Even yours." The matron's expression flickered just for an instant. Was it doubt, regret? No one could tell. She raised a hand. "Go before I change my mind." The guard stepped aside. As they walked down the long glass corridor toward the shuttle bay, Terry finally exhaled. The glow of her scar pulsed faintly through her armor. "You spoke to the matron like a soldier of fire," Elias said, "and you stood before her like one who has nothing left to fear." He shrugged. "You learned that after enough near deaths." She glanced sideways at him, a faint, fragile smile forming. "You humans, you win wars without fighting them. We just fight for hearts instead of land," he said quietly. The doors opened to the stars once more. As the shuttle lifted away, neither of them looked back. The Dominion had lost a commander that day, but the stars had gained something rarer. Two souls bound not by blood or law, but by mercy. Years passed. Not in silence, but in the quiet hum of healing, the Asterion no longer drifted alone. It became something greater, part hospital, part sanctuary, part myth whispered across the scattered colonies. To the human settlers, it was the wandering clinic. To the Arvani, it was the ship of mercy. And to those who had seen it with their own eyes, it was proof that compassion could cross the stars. Elias Ward aged quietly. The once sharp lines of his face softened with time, but his eyes, steady, unyielding, remained the same. Theri had changed too. Her crystalline armor no longer bore the colors of the Dominion. Instead, she wore a plain, functional uniform, one stitched by human hands. The faint scar beneath her plates glowed now like a second heart. Where others saw exile, she had found freedom. Together, they healed soldiers from both sides of conflicts, pirates, orphans, refugees, anyone with a pulse and pain. And word spread, slowly, quietly, impossibly. Others began to follow, human medics, Arvani healers. Those who had once feared the sphere of origin now touched the untouchable, saving lives once left to die. A movement was born, the Covenant of Hands. One evening, as the Asterion drifted near the nebula of Solara, Theri stood at the viewport. The blue clouds shimmered like a living sea. Elias joined her, carrying 2 cups of steaming tea. "Never thought I'd see this again," he said, setting one beside her. She tilted her head. "Tea or stars that don't hate us?" He smiled. "Both." They stood in silence for a while. Somewhere deep in the ship, the hum of the engines mingled with distant laughter. Voices of both human and Arvani, working side by side. "You ever think," she said quietly, "how strange it is that everything changed because you refused to obey?" "Not strange," he said. "Just human." She looked at him with that faint glimmer, the same one she'd given him the day he saved her life. "You broke a law. I broke a people's pride, and somehow it healed more than wounds," he nodded slowly. "That's what mercy does. It doesn't ask for permission." A transmission came through that night. The symbol on the hollow screen froze them both. The sigil of the Dominion. Elias frowned. "They're reaching out?" Theri hesitated before accepting the call. The image that appeared wasn't the cold, perfect face of Matron Serhal. It was someone younger, a commander wearing the insignia that once belonged to her. "Former Commander Theri," the voice said softly. "The Council has seen your work. The Covenant spreads faster than we expected. There are protests now, voices asking to abolish the law of untouchables. Even the matron cannot silence them." Theri said nothing. "They ask if you will return, to teach, to heal." Silence filled the room. Elias watched her carefully, waiting. Finally she spoke. "Tell them this, I am not returning to their world. They are welcome to join mine." The transmission ended. Elias smiled quietly. "That's a very human thing to say." "Perhaps," she said, setting her hand against the glass, watching the nebula swirl. "But it's also Arvani now." That night, as the Asterion drifted among the stars, Elias finally allowed himself to rest. His body was old, tired, but his heart full. There sat beside him in the med bay, where it had all begun years ago. The lights glowed softly around them. "When I first saw you," she murmured, "I thought you were a fool. A reckless human who didn't understand consequence." He smiled faintly. "And now? Now I think you were something rarer. A heart that refused to be afraid of touch." He chuckled softly. "Guess we both learned." The med bay lights dimmed. Through the viewport, the nebula shimmered like a heartbeat in the dark. "Elias," she whispered, "if they tell stories of you, what should they call it?" He smiled without opening his eyes. "Just tell them. A human once touched what no one else dared." Her gaze lingered on him, tender and fierce all at once. Then she whispered the words that would echo across generations. And because he did, the stars learned to heal,